Welcome to TopBeer. This is a new show about beer geekery, breweries, and the craft brewing scene in Tampa Bay. We are here today at Rapp Brewing. Why don't you come on in? My name is Rich Ellis, and with me is my co-host.
Hi, I'm Dan Castanera, and we're here in the center of Pinellas County at one of my favorite breweries, Rapp Brewing Company, with our friend Greg Rapp.
Prost.
Greg, you've got a beautiful looking beer there. What kind of beer is that?
That is a lager. It's our golden lager. It's actually based on the Dragon Golden Lager from India.
Wow.
It's made with Pilsner malts, some rice. It's delicately hopped with European noble hops, and it's one of my favorite beers. And since it's before noon, it's under 5%, and it's a great beer to start the day with.
Greg, I mean, you're known in this area for producing some outstanding beers. Tell us a little bit about your brewery and kind of how you got this going. I mean, like, what made you want to brew beer for a living?
Well, I actually started home brewing about 15 years ago, and that's where it all began. Actually, started making wine 40 years ago, and got into home brewing beer 15 years ago. Did that. Started a homebrew club. Started going to a lot of beer events, and at the beer events, people just loved the home brews we had, and everyone asked, "Where can I buy your beer?" And they said, "Well," I said, "I can't sell it to you because I'm a home brewer." And they're like, "Well, you need to open a brewery." And so about three years ago, we set out the plan to actually build out a brewery.
Outstanding. I think you did an amazing job.
Thanks.
It's a really cool place to hang out, and as a matter of fact, would you mind showing us around a little bit?
Oh, awesome. Would be happy to. Sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Let's go see the brewery.
Come on, guys.
This is our yeast lab. This is where we do all the propagation of our yeast. Our brewery is focused on creating and exploring various beer styles. We've produced over 80 different styles of beer in the 2.5 years that we've been open. And part of that challenge is that we use a lot of different yeast strains. We actually have over 25 different yeast strains that we continuously propagate up to produce the different beers. The yeast, I feel the yeast easily contributes 20 to 25% of the flavor of the beer. So one of our challenges is to keep the yeast going, propagate it up for every batch of beer. So Philip, right here, Philip Beard, he's an intern planning on opening a brewery in Arkansas later on this year. He's in there helping out and doing a little yeast work for today's brew.
What do we have going on in the wine jug?
We have a souring program, and we actually propagate bacteria off of the grain. So we're right now at the point where we've gone through and dropped the pH down, and we're actually working Pediococcus and Lactobacillus bacteria. And that later on this afternoon will be pitched into our Lichtenheiner, which is a smoky sour wheat beer, which won a gold medal last year at BFBC.
Very nice.
Outstanding. And here we are at what appears to be your grain storage.
That's where we store the grain, yep.
So tell me a little bit, I mean, this is how beer starts out? Is it just raw grain? How does this work?
It's malted barley, malted wheat, malted oats, and we probably have easily 50 different varieties of grain that we use for our different brews. We're a little low right now. We have a shipment coming in tomorrow, so we'll have more malt coming in. And it takes all these different, we have roasted malts, we have caramel malts, malts based on wheat. Most of our malts, almost all of them, are imported from Germany, England, Scotland, Ireland, some from Czech Republic. We have some from Patagonia, and see what else, and a little bit of American malt from Bar up in Minnesota.
Do you use mainly German malts to try and get the authentic flavor of the beer?
Absolutely, yeah. And actually, we use a special kind of malt for our wheat and Pilsner malt. It's floor malted. Floor malting is the old style where they actually put the grain into a big warehouse, and they wet it and they turn it by hand. So it's the old-fashioned. It adds another dimension to the flavor of the beer.
So once what do you do with the grain? Like, how you just dump it in a kettle?
Yeah, you might want to open a bag and just take a handful out and show what it looks like. So that's a Bohemian wheat malt. We mill our malts the morning of brew, so it's all freshly milled. So it goes through like a grinder. It cracks the malt. Which
you said this is a wheat malt?
That's wheat malt. Yep.
Delicious.
Run it through the mill to crack it. It doesn't pulverize. It just cracks it, which exposes the starches within the malt, which then gets mixed in with warm water, usually anywhere between 145 to 155 degrees, which activates the enzymes that the malting created. And the enzymes then attack the starches, and it creates sugars. And the yeast is able to attack and convert into carbon dioxide, and the thing we're really interested in, the alcohol.
Excellent. Excellent. So those suckers, those little yeast suckers that we saw over there in the
they do all the work.
lab,
without yeast, you wouldn't have beer.
So let's see, what do we have brewing today?
Today we're brewing a Lichtenheiner. It's a smoked sour wheat beer.
Let's take a look at that.
This is our super fancy, high-tech brew house. We produce a barrel and a half of beer per batch. We're able, this is sized and set up to allow us to brew 2 batches of beer a day. So we brew 7 days a week, anywhere from 7 to 12 batches a week. Wow. We have 34 of these fermenters, which is about a little over 50 barrels worth of fermentation capacity. So we monitor fermentation. As soon as fermentation is done, we start losing that CO2 blanket on top. It's time to crash the beers, and I'll show you how we do that.
Boom, 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 boom. Gonna shoot you right down.
Open sesame. So originally, this was designed as a 3-chamber with 3 separate temperatures. This front chamber used to be our ale chamber. We keep it at 65 degrees. We've since converted it, since we've added the ale chamber over there. This is now our lager chamber. So this runs about 52 degrees. So we'll have lager beers fermenting at about 52, 53 degrees. And also when an ale beer is done, we'll run it in here, and the cooler temperature will cause the yeast to start dropping out. This room is about 35 degrees. So we feed our tap system in here. We'll bring the beer in here for a day. At this temperature, the yeast and trub and everything will crash right down. And then we'll run the beer into one of these 2 pressure vessels. These are bright tanks.
So this is a bright tank, you said?
That's a bright tank. It's designed to hold pressure up to 15 psi. We hook carbon dioxide onto it in an air stone, which is this little guy down here. And it pumps CO2 through the air stone, bubbles up through the beer, and the beer picks up the carbonation from the CO2. It's about a 24-hour process. Once that's done, we'll bring kegs in here and run the beer into the kegs and keg them up.
Very cool.
And that's pretty much the process. That's my $150 Craigslist find.
So now that we've seen how the beer goes from grain to glass, we're missing the glass part.
Yes. Hey, we need to fix that. I have an idea.
Well, we're here with Greg Rapp in the tasting room here at Rapp Brewing Company. I have got one of my favorite beers here called the Gose, spelled Gose for those who want to know. But Rapp, you have probably the best Gose in the country. So, tell me a little bit about this. How is it so awesome?
I like it. I don't know about best in the country, but I like it. It's an old German style. Was originally brewed in the city of Goslar, which was eastern Germany, probably around the 1700s. It's an old mining town. They mined silver there for about 1,000 years, and their water was slightly salty from all the mining, from all the minerals that it picked up, particularly the sodium chloride and such. So they brewed a beer using their salty water. They couldn't get barley malt, so they used wheat malt. So they did a wheat beer using their salty water. They add some coriander to it, and they let it spontaneously ferment. So it's a sour beer due to the lactic fermentation, and it's got a little coriander taste to it, and a nice wheat backbone. And I brewed it as a home brewer about 5 years ago and fell in love with it, and I've been brewing it ever since, and it brews very well on our system. And we do, as you saw earlier, we harvest the bacteria off of brewer's malt. So every batch is a little bit different. Sometimes we get a little more petio bacteria working it. So the sourness is a little bit wild from batch to batch. That's just part of the...
What kind of different flavors do you get from the petio versus lactic?
Petio gets you a little more funky. Lactic is more of a cleaner tartness. Petio will get a little more funky, and it's kind of neat because we'll do the souring in the kettle overnight, and the next morning when you come in, you open the lid of the kettle, you can tell what's been working, because petio will coagulate the proteins more so than the lactose. When you open the kettle up, there'd be this big glob of proteins floating on top of the kettle. You're like, okay, we got batches, a little more petio. If it's lacto, you get this nice, clean, small bubbles on top of it. But again, our goal is to recreate old styles. Part of the Gose style is the variability in it. It's wild fermented, so batch to batch, it's a little bit different, but I think it's always pretty good.
Well, this batch is absolutely phenomenal.
Great,
Prost.
thank you. Prost.
What are you drinking, Rich?
Breuhen.
Yes, that's the Breuhen. That's a beer we just recently brewed. It's another old style from about the 1700s, one of the most popular beers in Europe for a while. It's also a spontaneously wild lactic fermentation, but it has no wheat in it. It's 100% Pilsner malt, higher gravity. It runs close to 7%. It's got a little more body to it. Nice little tartness. Very, very lightly hopped. It's maybe 4 IBUs. And we just let the Pilsner malt shine through. Again, it's that 4 malted Pilsner, which has a nice little character to it with the lacto fermentation, and really no hops.
It's a delicious beer for sure. And at 7%, I can't tell at all.
Oh, you will.
I mean, you also have some very famous beers. Like, for example, this chocolate peanut butter stout. I mean, everybody that I've ever talked to about Rapp Brewing is like, man, have you tried your chocolate peanut butter stout? It's delicious.
We have to brew that one every week. I got to get it on the brew schedule every week. We have a hard time keeping up. That actually was brewed originally here. I brewed it with a local home brewer, Mike Jimerthy. Wanted to brew his chocolate peanut butter stout, so he came in. We brewed a 30-gallon batch, a 1-barrel batch of his chocolate peanut butter stout. We put it on, had great reception to it. People loved it. We've adapted his recipe to better work on our system, and it's been a hit ever since. I mean, we just brew the heck out of that one.
Oh, it's delicious. I've had plenty of that in the past as well.
Yeah, it actually got a bronze on Rapp Beer.
Oh, wow.
And it's ranked number 8 on Rapp Beer out of all the stouts.
That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's ranked 8. The Gose is ranked 4. Our Lichtenheiner is actually top 20 on Rapp Beer. It's not on right now either. Right at the moment, we have a Pollock Mavi, which is a Czech amber lager. That's also ranked in the top 20. So I never know. Every now and then I go in and take a look and see, and I'm always surprised to see how people are enjoying the beers and really rating them high.
Now, I do remember was it a hazelnut porter that you had on here?
Yeah.
A while ago too? That was delicious.
Yeah,
as
we
well.
usually have that one on too on Nitro on number 11.
How many beers do we have on tap here? 20?
20.
At all times.
Yeah.
That's a lot of brewing.
We have 20 beers on tap, and I can probably rotate every single tap out right now. Put 20 more different beers on.
20 different beers.
Different beers. Yeah.
Outstanding. That's a lot of beer coming out of this little system.
Yep.
So we have to keep coming back day after day just to make sure.
That's part of the goal. That's what
How is the OMG beer coming, and are we going to see a release soon?
We have a batch in a Heaven Hill barrel right now aging. We'd like to let it go for about a year, so probably won't be till March or April. We'll bring that out. We've got another barrel that's half full that we'll be topping up this week, and then 2 more batches working at the moment. So we've kind of streamlined our process of brewing that beer. It's very intensive. We use twice as much malt to produce that beer, and we produce half the volume that we normally produce. Instead of a barrel and a half, we had about 3/4 barrel, about 28 gallons, but we use twice as much malt to get half as much beer.
Use the first wort from the mash?
Pretty much, yeah. It's very thick and chewy, and we have a very intensive fermentation cycle. We pitch probably about 5 times as much yeast. We actually bump up the fermentation, so we feed the wort, feed the fermentation a couple times a day, add oxygen, yeast nutrients, just to keep the yeast up and let it actually acclimate to the higher alcohol levels as it goes.
Very intensive beer to make.
Yeah, it is.
Now it's Belgian strong, if I'm not mistaken, right? That kind of almost is like a cordial in a sense, right? I mean,
yeah. We've got some that's several years old now. The process, we use a lot of oxygen to keep the yeast healthy, keep it fermenting. It does, the oxygen does stale the beer a little bit. Because one of the things as a brewery you want to eliminate or keep oxygen out of your beer as much as possible. We put a lot into it. It does create after aging for say a year or so, it does create a port-like character to the beer. So it'll finish off 18, 19, close to 20% usually, and that port-like character will develop over time. So it's a beer we don't want to rush. It's a pain to make, and we just let it go, and when it's ready, it's ready.
well, I'm still sitting on my bottles from last year, so.
All right,
maybe
it keeps getting better.
Maybe I'll drink them when we pick up the new ones.
Well, let's switch gears a little here.
So you notice I dodged that question about expansion, right? I didn't get it, didn't I?
Pretty well.
Divert.
You've hired some assistant brewers and a head brewer. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I have 3 brewers at the moment, Troy, Clint, and Joe. Joe's the head brewer. Troy and Clint are assistant brewers. I also have an intern, Eunice Painter, who comes in once a week to work with us. She is planning on opening a brewery in Dunedin later on this year. She's right now getting all her equipment in, getting some plumbing and electrical work done, and she'll be located, I think, down on the end of Douglas, right at 580 is where her location is, just up the road from Dunedin Brewery. And Flip Beard, who's with us, is planning on opening a brewery in Arkansas, southwest Arkansas here later on this year. And he came here to work with us to learn our process. He plans on, I think he's going to do a 3-barrel system, but very similar type of a setup that we have here. And then my head brewer, Joe, and my head bartender, Dan, they're award-winning home brewers, will be leaving us March 1st, Sunday. They're going to be opening their own brewery.
Wow.
So you heard it here first.
Wow.
So you've become like a...
I'm an incubator.
You're infecting Pinellas County with breweries.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing.
No, I mean, as a brewery, I imagine, it is more competition for you, but I mean, how does that affect you, really?
I just do what I do, and I don't really worry about what everybody else is doing. I mean, we have our focus here on our mission, again, is to brew a variety of beer styles, interact with the craft beer community, continually improve what we do, and also try new things, different beers. And it doesn't impact me at all. I mean, I think there's more the merrier. I mean, we saw a big influx a year ago, with 3 Daughters, Green Bench, St. Pete Brewing, Paradise, and initially I saw a little bit of a downturn in business, but I think which turned around a few months later. I think what happened is we've got more people exposed to craft beer because we have more craft breweries, and actually created more business for all of us. So like they say, the tide rises all ships, and I think, I tell you, every day that we're open, there's people come in here that have never experienced craft beer, and their friends drug them in here. You got to try this, and we easily create half a dozen new craft beer drinkers every day in this tasting room.
Wow.
So it's, yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's fun to watch when they bring them in. They come, here's my friend. You got anything like Coors Light or Bud Light or whatever? I'm like, okay, we'll try these sour beers or whatever. This is our maple wheat bock. It's a very strong Weizenbock, which is a wheat beer made with Weihenstephan yeast, which throws a lot of banana clove flavors. And at the end, in the bright tank, we actually add maple syrup to it.
Nice.
So it has a nice little maple kick to it.
Cool.
Enjoy.
Thank you. Maple wheat bock. So have you been following any of the new things that are going on? Some of the legislation?
Yeah,
it's,
yes.
looking good for us.
Yeah, Latvala, I believe it passed 100% in committee. So his bill's out. Stube's bill, I'm not sure where that's at. His is more sweeping because it addresses changes to the 3-tier system, allowing self-distribution and other things. They made such a big deal about the tourism exemption for tasting rooms. I'm using that particular statute. That statute allows me as a brewery to have a retail location, which is this tasting room, which allows me to directly sell my beer at retail to the end consumer, bypassing the distributors. Well, they don't like that. So, but that law was put in place in the 60s to allow Anheuser-Busch, which owned Busch Gardens at the time, to have beer at their amusement park. And the law says that, as a brewery, you can have a retail location as long as that retail location promotes tourism.
So, but you get people from out of state, and you get people from.
I get people
out
from
of
around the
country.
world coming here. And so I think, from what I understand, is the change of the legislation that's been proposed is to remove the tourism exemption. So, which fixes what the wholesalers were saying, oh, you have to prove your, promote tourism and all that. So they're just going to scratch that line. It says in the legislation or the statute will read, a brewery can have a tasting room, period. So I like that. That's good.
Sounds great.
It's really, as a small brewer, small brewery starting up, the tasting room is what provides the funding
It's your lifeblood.
to grow.
It really is. Absolutely.
And as an incubator for breweries, what advice would you give anyone that has dreams of starting a brewery?
Learn your craft. Get into home brewing, join a club, brew as often as you can. Submit your beers to competitions to get feedback. The judges' notes are very valuable. Attend beer fests. If you have an active homebrew club, that's at Beer Fest. Get your beer out there, and that was one of the main things I did. Is I was serving my beer at the Beer Fest, and I was interacting one-on-one with the craft beer people. Getting feedback on my beers, and it's very important. And then if you want to open a brewery, make sure you have lots of money. Make sure you're willing to invest 100 hours a week in it, and make sure that you can afford to not pay yourself for a couple of years. Right?
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. Lots of money. You heard it here, folks. Lots of money.
Well, we really appreciate you having us out here today.
Glad to have you.
It was a real treat to visit one of my favorite breweries, at least. And
if not definitely my favorite.
so thanks again, and,
Sure,
and
my
cheers
pleasure.
to your success, my friend. And Tampa Bay Beer Week coming up here in the next
Yeah,
couple weeks.
looking
So
forward to that. That's going to be great.
It should be loads of fun. Well, thanks again, sir.